Aaron Eckhart or Christian Bale, you either become a hero or you live long enough to see yourself, you die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become a villain. And I think that was his mindset. He wanted to die before he could do this horrible shit. Because he knew, I think, he was on a predestined road to destruction, honestly. I mean, think about it. Think about all the shit that happened to him. And then up to age 14, he experienced more by 14 than most of us did probably by 20, 25, The death in front of him multiple times, the head injuries, finding out he was adopted, believing that his mother had died in childbirth with him, which turned out to be a complete lie. His adopted parents lied to him about that. She was still alive. She published an article in Good Housekeeping right after he was arrested about being his mother. So he found out after he was already in prison, after he was already in jail, about his mother, actually, his birth mother, still being alive. So he was fed a lot of bullshit. And granted, that doesn't make it right, what he did, but it doesn't help when you take an already fragile mind and kind of do all that extra stuff to it. It's the nature versus nurture argument. If it's, shit in, shit out everywhere you go, that's going to be what you're used to knowing. That becomes the norm, not that becomes, the rule, not the exception. You know what I'm saying? So.
Yeah, you make a good point, too, about the fragile mind, and I think that's what's really important here. A lot of times people just kind of write that off, but, with everything that happened, maybe it wouldn't matter to me, maybe it wouldn't affect me, but maybe it wouldn't affect Vic, maybe it wouldn't affect you. But a guy like him who had that type of mind, I guess it just wreaked havoc on him, and it just kind of continued on after that. I mean, okay, so he goes to the Army. He went AWOL one night. He apparently was caught stealing from the mess hall, cited for 2 incidents, and then apparently he has sex for the first time and gets VD from a prostitute. Now, if that's not bad luck, I don't know what it is. And, this is something not talked about much, but I have to say, and if Vic's listening, Berkowitz was actually stationed by us, buddy, in Fort Knox, Kentucky. And that's when he started attending a Baptist church and praying because I guess he felt empty or whatever the case may be. I can't really speak to it too much. But besides, they were saying that, I don't know, it helped give him like a purpose. And actually he was given a general rating of an outstanding and dependable soldier. So I don't know. But at the age of 20, that's when he started setting fires again. We've talked about that throughout. I mean, it's weird. It was like a switch for him. It would turn off and then turn back on randomly. I don't know if it would happen in periods of stress in his life or what the deal was with that.
Yeah, that kind of just speaks to that whole fires of hell. He believes that he was, sort of invaded by the devil, that whole reference, the biblical reference there. And it just did fire, and then the parallels. I mean, I'm not saying that it's actually what it is, but it seems like now he sees, I guess, a parallel between himself and Jesus Christ right before Jesus Christ was killed on the crucifixion, right before he was crucified, because he talks about it in the videos today. And it's so weird. I get so much flack from people. It's because of me wanting to, be a criminal psychologist. I studied the serial killers and abnormal psychology heavily, at the university, and everybody was like, "Why? Why do you like what they do? Why do you appreciate them? Why do you care?" It's like, I don't condone what they did. I think it's interesting to study it from a scientific analysis and a behavioral analysis, what led to those actions, because those actions, those inclinations were probably already there. Things just amplified in their life to, that being the answer. Things pointed to that solution. But I don't glorify serial killers. I mean, I just appreciate the process it takes to, sort of become one. I mean, it takes some serious, groundbreaking, just awful ground zero shit, for that to happen. And we talked about it with Bundy, and we talked about it with Gacy, and we talked about it with Fish, and with all these other people. They all have some weird quirk. Fish liked to stick needles in his groin, and Gacy liked to have sex with, underage boys and, all that other stuff. And then Berkowitz liked to target women. And that could be that could be anything. The age-old argument of mother, it's like he felt like a hatred towards his mother. or, his adopted mother, and he wanted to target women that looked like her with the long brown hair, or, it could be that he felt like, he was told his mother was dead, so it's like, he was like, oh, well, what a good idea, let me just kill everybody that looks like Mom. It could be anything, really.
Mm-hmm. Well, and also, I talked about how he started up with the fires again. He started his journal claims 1,411 fires. He actually kept a detailed journal of it, which is fucked up in itself. You know what I mean? It's one thing to start some fires because you're just kind of intrigued by it. It's quite another to actually document every single time you did it. I mean, that is an absolute, solid number there.
Not if you're a serial killer. Right?
Well, no.
I mean, you have trophies and things like that. You're going to keep track of those things. So it is an interesting thing about, for Berkowitz itself, the fact that he specifically targeted, brunettes. And that was a whole thing that the press was really pushing during that time, that it was a brunette thing. And so people were walking in the streets and wearing wigs and changing the color of their hair, dyeing their hair so that they wouldn't be a target. I mean, it was an interesting thing. And I guess one can draw a parallel that, his mother was long brunette, and maybe that's what it was, but who really knows? I mean, but he did actually target just brunettes. It was pretty interesting. But so did Bundy,
and that's the funny thing. That's the funny thing. We can sit here and speculate, and he said whatever over time, but I don't think anybody really has ever been told what the real reason for what he was doing was. I mean, we've been fed stuff, but who knows if it's true or not. Although I could say that about a lot of people, to be honest with you, So it makes it tough to kind of break down somebody like that because he was quiet for 10 years after it happened, and then he started saying other things. But we'll get there. I mean, apparently the age of 21 was big for him because that's when he was honorably discharged from the Army. He started a job as a cab driver. He enrolled at Bronx Community College. He found out his real name was Richard Falco, and he also set a series of fires in New York. He moved into an apartment at 2161 Barnes Avenue. He shoots a German Shepherd. There you go, more animal abuse, which is funny because he was actually working at IBI as a security guard with dogs. And then that same year, while he was 21, he found his birth mother, Betty Falco, and sent her a Mother's Day card. And that's when they began their relationship. David actually started to drive a taxi cab, around that time too, like I said. So age of 21, I mean, most people are out getting drunk. He's finding his mom, finding out his real name, and setting fires. Kind of crazy. And shooting German Shepherds, right? He's not most people. There's no doubt about that.
That's correct.
Well, isn't it fucked up that this guy was a security guard and served in the Army? It's just fucked up to think about. You know what I mean? But it's not like he's the only one that's ever done anything like that. It's just weird to think about. That it's like, this is the guy that's protecting you. No big deal.
A lot of
if you
people probably feel the same way about Dahmer.
Yeah.
Or if you want to go to Kentucky Fried Chicken, you'd meet Casey. I mean, there's just, or the BTK killer.
Yep.
Raider. I mean, he was a upstanding individual in that community, and he just had an odd hobby, I guess.
Speaking of, I saw something really terrible I wanted to share with you guys because I know only you could appreciate it the way that I do. It was a picture of Dahmer, since we were talking about Army, and that's something he had in common with Berkowitz, both with the Army, and it said, "My baloney really did have a first name," and I was like, "Oh, that's so fucked."
Yeah, somebody tagged us in that. It's funny.
Oh.
So I thought 21 was big for him. Apparently 22 was also big. What did he do? Set more fires? Hired as a security guard at JFK Airport? This is also when he started claiming that he heard voices from the dogs that accompanied him during his shifts, the guard dogs or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Then he did a lot of things. He quit the security job, and then he goes to work as a duct worker for an air conditioning company. I don't know why. Maybe it's because he was hearing dogs talk to him. This guy's like the dog whisperer.
Well, you know,
So,
he said later on that was all bullshit. Like, you know, when the press started saying he heard the voices from Sam, you know, from Harvey the dog, he said, no, that was misunderstood. They just latched on to something, and the media bought into it. He said what it was I had a noisy dog, you know, that lived next to me named Harvey. He was my neighbor's dog, noisy dog. He got on my nerves.
Exactly.
And they said, you know, they also said there was a dog named Sam. Sam did not exist. Sam was supposed to be Salway or Sam Hain. That's what he was studying in the occult. It's just the media totally like fucked all that up because
you know how the media
I thought and laughed during the interview in prison about it. He's given a serious video. They brought up the dog. He said that's like a misnomer. It's just them feeding into the wrong lines and listening to what the press, you know, the press latches onto one thing, and then that becomes the thing to talk about with the case, or, you know, depending on what it is. He said that I didn't hear my neighbor's dog talking. I didn't take orders from that dog. All I said was there was an annoying dog who lived next to me named Harvey, and that's so he was very adamant about that.
Yeah. And actually, this same year, he wrote a letter to, you know, his adoptive father, you know, and he basically told him that he was having depression. And I guess that didn't do any good, though. You know how they always say, let it out? Well, I guess he didn't let it out enough because on, you know, Christmas Eve, 1975, this is when it all starts, really. You know, this is where he tries to kill 2 young women with a knife. And the first victim was unidentified but wasn't seriously hurt and was actually able to fight back. The second was Michelle Foreman, and he attacked her as she crossed a bridge, but she also survived. And this is where, you know, he made up his mind then and there. He's not a Bundy. He's not a Gacy. He's not any of those guys. He's a guy that doesn't like it up close and personal. You know what I mean? Too messy, too all sorts of things. He's the type that's kind of a sniper, even though he's not a sniper. It's the same concept, right?
Right.
Johnny, do you think there's a different mindset among these guys that use a gun as opposed to, you know, like to do it, I don't know, like to feel somebody die? I mean, I don't know any other way to put it than that.
Well, I mean, they're all different, and they all have a similar. They're going to want to have something personal, so that's why it was interesting that he was more. Most of the things he did, he started out with he first like you described, he first used a knife, but the rest of them, all the murders were done by gun. Other ones are very close up. I mean, you know, like to, you know, some of them like to, like Kemper, like to cut their heads off and have sex with their heads. You know, like they wanted it really personal. So I don't, you know, he's an interesting dude. Even though you talked about, you know, one of the things that the letters that he signed at the crime scene was that he called himself the Son of Sam, and that was one of the things that drew him to the whole dog thing, right? So it was blown up in the media, but he sort of helped push that a little bit, I think.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I think the same year, this is when he gets his rifle permit and purchases a Commando Mark III semi-automatic rifle. Dude, he got it for $152.50. I mean, what the fuck do you think he was planning on doing with that? I know he didn't end up using it, but you know what was already going through his mind. I wonder why he didn't use that. What do you think? I mean, has he ever talked about that? Have you guys ever heard him talk about that? It's documented, but I don't know what his purpose for it was, or if he ever said.
Yeah, I don't have any specific quotes pertaining to that. So no, I don't.
No, he didn't mention it in any of the video clips or any of the interviews that I watched. He never even mentions the rifle. I mean, who knows why he really had it? You know, maybe he thought about it. Because remember, in one of his letters, he said goodbye and good night, but I'll be back. Maybe when he meant being back, he was going to try semi-automatic, you know, rifles and stuff next, since he had already kind of shown he was a badass with the handguns. You know,
a lot of NBC News reports talked about how he was planning on going out in a blaze of glory, and I'd never heard that again after that. So I'm not sure what to think about that. But this is around the time also where he moves in, you know, to that house next to Sam Carr, which is the one with the dog that was pissing him off, and he actually made a Molotov cocktail to kill the dog, but it didn't work out. So, I mean, regardless if the dog's quote-unquote talking to him or not, I'm just being honest with you guys. I love dogs, but if there's a dog keeping me up all night and shit like that, it'd probably fuck with my head at least a little bit too, you know? Not to the point that I'm going to murder somebody, but maybe I might want to kill the dog or the owner. I'm just saying. Probably not the dog, the owner, more than likely. Because